All right, we continue on our 2025 ECU football opponent previews. Joining us, Jared Kalmus, back from the Alamo Audible. He has joined us for a few years now, talking UTSA athletics. And Jared, welcome back. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. Thanks for having me back. It's always a blast. And you saying that kind of made me realize that it's pretty strange that UTSA is in a conference with all these other Texas schools, but I feel like we've played ECU more than we played North Texas. I don't know. It's weird.
A unique league, definitely. But UTSA now a baseball school. Did not know that was going to be the case. But man, how about real quick before we dive into football? That surprised all of us on the outside. How about the folks there in San Antonio? The baseball season you guys had.
I think that there was an expectation that this team had a chance to get to a regional. I don't think anyone expected they would go and knock out Kansas State, knock out Texas on their home field, right? That was mind blowing. So I think expectations were high coming into the season, but for a team that's never gotten to that level of success, it was pretty remarkable. First time any Roadrunner athletics program has finished in the top 25 in any sport, which is a pretty cool achievement.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll see if that momentum carries over to football. And speaking of momentum, I asked coaches and players this a lot. Like, can you take the end of last season and bring that to the off season and the beginning of a new year? And I guess UTSA hopes that's the case because almost a tale of two seasons for you guys last year, right? Really good second half. Also, had some folks from Pirate Radio go to the Dome, talk about the atmosphere there and how cool it is. You guys were awesome at home, couldn't win on the road. So those two kind of the stories from last year. How do you summarize 2024?
Well, I think you're spot on. First of all, I definitely a tale of two halves of the season. I think it was just kind of a new regime on offense, right? Like the offensive coordinator returned, but you had a new quarterback in Owen McCowan. Your wide receiver room had turned over. Some change in the running back position. Offensive linemen moved around a little bit. So I think it took some time for that chemistry to build, for guys to build that expectation of when is this receiver going to come out of the break, right? How much am I going to lead on this pass, right? What's a cutback lane I'm going to take on the ground? So I think he saw those small things improve over time. And I think back to like that ECU game, like there's probably three plays that you could go back and circle for UTSA that like if they would have connected, got the extra yard for the first down, completed the catch, right? They probably would have won that game. So it's like kind of those finer details that we saw the improvement from for UTSA. And thankfully for them, they're returning like almost the whole offense, right? I think they're like top 10 in the nation in returning production on offense. We'll get into defense, and that's a different story. But, on the offensive side of the ball, you got to feel pretty good if you're UTSA.
Yeah, sounds pretty similar to the Pirates. And yeah, ECU got UTSA not only at a good time last year, but also at home. It'll be the exact opposite this year on the road and later in the year. Something that does kind of line up with last season for UTSA, another difficult non-conference schedule, especially the first two, right?
Right. A&M, that's going to be a tough out, right? I think they have questions at the quarterback position, but, one of the most tough environments in college football. So, you're playing with house money for that one. Texas State's the interesting one because UTSA has dominated that I-35 rivalry, as long as UTSA's had a football program. And then Texas State just smacked UTSA last year, and they lose most of their roster, right? So I think they're still going to be a good team, but it's like how much of a step back are they going to take if they take a step back? And then also, what does that home environment do for UTSA? So I think that's the key one in the out-of-conference slate, right? They should beat UIW, though they are a really strong FCS program. And Colorado State, I mean, UTSA should have, the on-paper talent advantage. But if you can find a way to beat Texas State, then even if you drop that Colorado State game, I think you'll be okay.
Saw Army and Navy have tremendous seasons last year, Jared, and we'll talk to Phil Steele coming up next Tuesday. Looking forward to hearing his take on the American. But have you looked around yet, Jared? Tulane's always there. Memphis kind of always at or near the top. Like who's the team to beat in the AAC this year, or is it wide open in your opinion?
I think it's pretty wide open for me. Tulane, I think, earns the respect, especially if you look at what they've been able to do in the portal. They've done a really good job with their NIL and rev share there. So I think they're going to reload pretty well. I think they're really talented. They've got great coaching. So if I had to pick someone that's a favorite, it would be Tulane, but I could see like a dark horse taking it this year as well. I think it's going to be the most balanced the conference has been in a while. So it should be pretty fun to follow just from a fan perspective.
Jared, I'll say outside looking in, we hold Jeff Traylor at a really high regard, and he definitely salvaged last year after a rough start. What's the approval rating of Coach Traylor there in San Antonio? Still high, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's still sky high for sure. It's like almost like it's surreal that he's going into his sixth season at UTSA with
Right.
the amount of success that he's had. I don't think anyone could imagine that you were to list any coach's success at a program like UTSA, given where they were when he came in, that coach would still be there this year. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. Now, you mentioned earlier that Traylor's staff did a good job of turning around, but that was kind of a point of debate across the fan base, right? Was it a good coaching job or not? So like you saw some people in the media that maybe didn't follow the team week by week, and they were like, "Oh, it's Jeff Traylor's best coaching job ever." Other fans were like, "Well, a lot of that was self-inflicted, right? They didn't have the right guys in the right position, right? Some guys didn't look ready." So that was a debate, and you kind of have seen Jeff address that head on and say that he personally did not think that he did a great job, that he delegated too much. So he's talked a lot about being more hands-on, expecting a higher level of discipline. They're like making the guys run suicides for being 5 minutes late, and stuff like that this year. So that'd be interesting to see the coaching approach change. But yeah, I mean, Jeff Traylor's still a legend at UTSA. If he were to leave after the season, he'd probably still get a statue set up on campus for him somewhere.
Pirates and Roadrunners will meet coming up late in the season this year in San Antonio. Jared, give us a couple names. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Key returners or maybe some new faces you're excited to see on the field.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Owen McCowan coming back at quarterback is huge. I think he's the conference's leading returning passer because, Horvath doesn't throw the ball too much in Navy. So he should have a huge season. Robert Henry returns a running back as well. So he's been a pretty good player for UTSA for a while. And he's one of those guys that got that extra JUCO year. And UTSA had a lot of guys that were eligible to take that extra year because the Diego Pavia ruling. But Henry's the only one that stayed at UTSA. All those other guys, they went to Power 5. And even if they're going to ride the bench, they're like, hey, I'm going to go get six figures, right? It's my last year. Wasn't expecting this. Already did senior day. So Henry coming back was pretty cool. And I think he'll have a pretty big year as well. And they got some really, really good transfers at running back position as well. John Emery comes in from LSU. And Adrian Peterson's son, Amarian Peterson, he played his freshman year at USC, actually started in their bowl game, and he's coming into UTSA as well. So on paper, that running back room is pretty stacked. We'll see how it turns out. At the wide receiver position, you got David Amador coming back, and he was a big catalyst for UTSA's turnaround, right? He was injured for most of the season. He was expected to be the number 2 receiver for them. And when he returned, it was just like, sprinkling dynamite powder around the offense and just had that powder keg explosiveness to him. Devin McEwen's back as well. He had a good year last year. Michigan State transfer, Houston Christian transfer that, looks pretty good. And then tight end position is pretty interesting as well. They probably got 3 guys there that are capable of performing at a really high level. Houston Thomas had some huge catches for them last year. So a lot of talent there. And then offensive line as well. Bringing back a lot of guys, a lot of good transfers coming in. But UTSA's had, 2-3 deep at offensive line before and had injuries completely derail it. So I think everyone's still holding their breath a little bit to see how healthy that unit can be.
All right, Roadrunners are going to score. Are they going to stop folks? So how about the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, that's the big question. You probably hear this a lot when you interview other fan bases, but they're like, oh, if we could just be average on defense, or if we could just be average on offense. And that's how it is for UTSA. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like, statistically, they weren't that great on defense, but they did have a lot of good players, right? So it'll be interesting. I'm not expecting the defense to be great. I don't think they're like as efficient. I think the offense does a good job of like scheming guys open. And I think the defense is trying to cover for that a lot of times. Like, I think the level of athleticism, especially in the secondary for UTSA, typically isn't there compared to other positions as far as recruiting success goes. So I don't know. It's a huge question mark. I mean, I think every position on the defense, you're going to see names that, like, I couldn't even honestly tell you who for sure the starters are going to be, much less the 2 deep and the 3 deep. So they've had some good recruiting wins. They've got some good transfers in. But overall, it's a lot of question marks for sure.
Jerry, kind of big picture here, and I admit I don't know the history of UTSA, but in the timeline we're in right now, you said they finished top 25 in a sport for the first time ever in baseball.
Yep.
We've seen the football success. Like, are we in some kind of glory days? Like, are you covering this team at the right time in our universe's timeline here?
Yeah, I think so. That's something I consider too. Like, I've been very fortunate that, like, I've only seen the good times for UTSA pretty much.
Yeah.
Even going back to when I was a student, and I always think, like, if I'd have went to another university where like they had the glory days at like Nebraska or something like that, it would be pretty depressing. So yeah, I think that's part of it. You know, it's a special moment. They've got great coaching talent. The admin has done an awesome job. They have not lost a head coach in like one of the primary sports since Lisa Campos and Taylor Amy have taken over administration. So that's been huge. I mean, it's so hard to do that at the group of 5 level, as you're well aware. And I think some of it too is just like the school had a late start, right? The school was founded in 1969. Athletics started like in the early 90s, and football didn't start till 2011. So some of it is like, you know, this is like what the program's supposed to look like, but it took some time to build it up. Hopefully that's the optimistic approach, and it keeps growing from there. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. And even sports that there's not a lot of support, a lot of resources like baseball, to still see them do big things is pretty surreal. It kind of defies explanation, to be honest, sometimes. But it's definitely cool to watch.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch from afar, but I will say thank you, C.J. Walker, for that crazy shot you made to beat UTSA on the road, so we didn't lose to you guys in basketball.
Yeah.
needed.
No, we're conveniently avoiding basketball in this conversation.
Can't win them all.
Those glorious days did come early. We did some articles recently on the site where, like, you know, they were beating Power 5 programs like in the Alamo Dome in the 90s. It's just hard to fathom that now with how bad things are.
Speaking of basketball in the Alamo Dome, they're not there anymore, but producer Jarrett, that's with 2 T's, not 1 D, already has a future on the Spurs. He's a big Spurs guy. I don't know how much you follow him or if you're a fan or not, but he loves where the Spurs are heading.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that they want to tie into like the Wemby phenomenon in San Antonio, like, you know, expecting the Spurs to go on a big run and try to have more collaboration with them, and you know, have like UTSA night at the stadium, because they're going to build that downtown stadium for basketball. And UTSA is going to get a big financial windfall because that land they're going to build it on is owned by UTSA right now. So, you know, maybe there's a chance they play some marquee games there against Memphis, or, you know, like a little tournament or something. But yeah, I mean, you'll take anything you can get for UTSA basketball. It's pretty bleak these days.
Jared, if folks want to know more about UTSA, I believe you had a recent pod about baseball and that topic, but tell folks what you guys have going on.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we try to cover all sports as best we can. We actually have a dedicated baseball podcast, which I'll plug here because I know that ECU has a ton of baseball fans. So it's all on our Alamo Audible podcast feed. But if you see the ones that say around the bird bath, like that's our baseball specific ones. So yeah, I mean, our team is growing. We're doing recruiting coverage now for the first time, which has been really exciting. But yeah, we're on YouTube and, you know, every podcast outlet. AlamoAudible.com. We have a lot of blog posts on as well. And of course on social media, Alamo Audible on all outlets.
Well, Jared, we'll talk to you again in late November. See where these teams are sitting when the Pirates and Roadrunners meet up on the field again. But appreciate your time, man. Have a great rest of your summer, and just get ready for football. I'm excited.
Yes, sir. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.